Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for choosing to spend your valuable time with us. Today's webinar will cover wolfHSM with PQC, presented by Senior Software Developer Anthony Hugh. My name is Emma, and I will be moderating the webinar. All attendees will be in listen-only mode. If you have questions, please use the Q&A box. After the presentation, Anthony will answer your questions. As always, our webinars are recorded and made available on our YouTube channel. If you'd like to stay updated with all the latest from wolfSSL, follow us on X, connect with us on LinkedIn, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to contact us via email at facts@wolfSSL.com if you have any further questions. Before we dive into the technical presentation, I'd like to provide a brief overview of wolfSSL. Today, wolfSSL secures over 5 billion connections. We have more than 2,700 OEM customers and dozens of resellers. wolfSSL consists of over 50 dedicated employees, primarily engineers. This progress is, of course, supported by a strong partner network that we are very proud of. Since the beginning, our engineering team has developed several embedded security products, including wolfCrypt with DO178 support, a FIPS 140-3 certification and a FIPS-ready offering, MQTT up to the V5 specification, SSH v2, TPM 2.0, a secure bootloader known as wolfboot, Java wrappers and JSSC support, and commercial support for curl, and our newest product offering, wolfHSM. These offerings are accompanied by thorough maintenance and support plans up to the 24/7 level. We also offer full service consulting. Now, I would like to turn it over to Anthony to discuss wolfHSM with PQC.
Thank you so much, Emma. Emma, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so before we get started, I'll introduce myself. My name's Anthony Hu. I've been working with wolfSSL close to 4 years now. I have approximately 25 years of experience in the consumer electronics industry as well. Wow, it really hurts to say that. That's a long time. Okay, so here's what we'll be talking about today. We're gonna go into a little bit about post-quantum cryptography and algorithm standardization and how we do our implementations. These are real-world practical implementations, by the way. It'll seem kind of disjoint as we talk through this stuff because it will all kind of get drawn together as we talk about our hardware security modules, the HSMs. I'll be picking out topics from the section I talk about in post-quantum cryptography. So for the first little bit, bear with me as it will seem disjoint. As most of you know, I am the post-quantum guy within wolfSSL. Whenever I do a webinar, it's usually about has some tie into post-quantum cryptography. Okay, so let's talk about PQC. Now, it wouldn't be a Anthony Hu wolfSSL webinar without you seeing this slide, right? We always talk about the motivation behind post-quantum cryptography. A lot of people are probably bored of this slide, but we always have to remember why we're doing this, right? And the reason why is because we have requirements. It's not about post-quantum computers. It's about our customers and your customers and how they have requirements from the government to be doing this right now. Yes, the year is 2025. It's not 2022. It's not 2023. We're in 2025. As you can see, you've got solid lines right there for software, firmware signing, and web browser server and cloud services. As well, traditional network equipment is coming online next year. So this is all coming at us really quickly right now, right? Notably, 2030. That's when conventional algorithms, the conventional algorithms that you think of today are supposed to be completely shut off within your software. So, this is a window of 5 years where you get to kind of have these algorithms on as defaults and then still have kind of the usage of your algorithms. your conventional algorithms as well. It's a very short window from an industry perspective. So when we say CNSA 2.0, what do we actually mean? Well, from the symmetric side, we're looking at AES 256, which notably is part of the CNSA 1.0 requirement as well, 1.0 requirement. And that's the same with SHA 384 and SHA 512. A lot of people are mistakenly think that, we're moving to AES 256 and SHA 384 and SHA 512 due to the quantum threat, but it's not the case. It's always been this way since CNSA 1.0. From the asymmetric key encryption side, we've got key exchanges and digital signatures. Uh, they actually specify within the CNSA 2.0 for the module lattice based asymmetric key encryption algorithms. They actually do specify strengths. So they're looking at MLChem, which is module lattice key encapsulation mechanism. They're specifying the 1024 parameter sets. And for MLDSA, which is module lattice digital signature algorithm, they're specifying security level, the parameter set at 87. Note that these are security equivalent to AES 256. Now for LMS and XMSS, so for the module lattice chem and module lattice DSA, those are appropriate for security protocols and communication protocols such as TLS, DTLS, and SSH and MQTT. On the bootloader side, we have LMS and XMSS, which are more appropriate. Notably, MLDSA is also appropriate for the bootloader side. So let's talk about standardization of these algorithms. These algorithms have RFCs, the hash-based digital signature schemes that are stateful already have RFCs in the IETF, and we're looking at 8391 and 8554. Not only that, they're mentioned in NIST special publications, 800-208, and are approved for use within those documents. Now, for the MLChem and MLDSA, we have FIPS 203 and FIPS 204, which officially standardize these algorithms. That said, they have not come out with RFCs yet. And for FIPS 205, which is SLHDSA and was based on Sphinx Plus, that is standardized. Notably missing from this is Falcon, but that is supposed to be coming out later in this year. And I think that one's called FNDSA, but I'm not sure. I can't remember that. But again, it'll be coming out later this year. There is something I want to point out here as well. These are the actual algorithms themselves. We haven't, so within the protocols, when you use these algorithms, you have to use identifiers for them. So those are in TLS 1.3, those are called code points. And those code points are used in the SIGALGS extension, as well as the supported groups extension and the key share extension. Within certificates, these algorithms are specified by OIDs. And so these code points and OIDs have yet to be standardized. They are specified in drafts, but not quite ratified as full-on standards yet. That should be happening any moment now. When we talk about the signature algorithms, we're looking at these ones. To go into a little bit of detail, we have the the acronym spelled out there. There's Extended Merkle Signature Scheme, which is what XMSS stands for, and the Leighton-Macaulay hash-based signatures. That's what LMS stands for. Notably, the SLHDSA is a Merkle tree, hierarchical hash-based signature scheme, but it is stateless. So it is appropriate for replacement of LMS and XMSS. But notably, the NIST says it's good for that, but the CNSA 2.0 guidance does not mention SLHDSA, only LMS and XMSS. And that makes things a little bit confusing. There's a bit of a misalignment there. So let's talk a bit about implementation. So I spoke about the hash-based signature schemes, and they all have, and we're gonna really only talk about the Merkle tree stuff because really it gets kind of complicated when it comes to the one-time signature schemes at the very bottom of them. And I have a different webinar about that, so I don't want to go into detail about that. But the most important detail about stateful hash-based signature schemes is that you only have a limited number of signatures that you're allowed to create. And that's because of the Merkle tree design. You can see at the bottom of this, there's a limited number of nodes at the very bottom, and then those nodes get concatenated and hashed to create the next node, right? And this is done recursively all the way up the tree until you get to the top node. And that top node is what's known as your public key. So as you can see, you can have many. This tree could be huge. It could be, um, many levels, and you could have millions of possible signatures. But you only have that finite number. It's not an infinite number of signatures like you would have in ECDSA. Um, it's notable that I said that SLHDSA uses this hierarchical scheme, but is also stateless. And it does this by playing some games with probabilities. And so there's a little, and so the trick is that at the bottom they don't have one-time signatures, they have few time signatures, and then they make some assumptions about probabilities. Again, I'm not really going to go into the details here. If someone wants information about those details, again, there's a previous webinar I did about it, and you can email us at facts@wolfSSL.com and request a meeting with us. We can go into more details about how the state works. So chems are really interesting. If you look at TLS 1.3 in its current form, key exchange is done through either ECDHE or FFDHE. And in both cases, the way it looks is both sides do a key gen, both sides send over a public key, and then both sides combine the peer's public key to derive a shared secret and continue with that shared secret. Chems work a little bit differently. As you can see, the client in a TLS 1.3 connection, the client would start with a key gen, put that public key in their key share, and then send it over to the server. Server would then encapsulate a shared secret and send over the ciphertext in its key share extension. At that point, the client has the ciphertext. They can then decapsulate using the private key, and they would then both have the shared secret and both would move forward with the shared secret. So it's a very there's a very how shall we say it? It's a new it's a there's a nuance in the difference, but luckily for you, we abstract that away because that's all abstracted as part of the TLS 1.3 implementation that we have. So what's really interesting is most people think that the performance is going to be really tough for these algorithms because, the artifacts are actually much larger. But that's not the case. The truth is that the performance of these of MLDSA and MLChem are really nice, are perfectly fine. For MLChem, for example, we're looking at performance that's wonderful, right? Like if you look at ECDH P256 and you look at MLChem 1024, so ECDH 256, P256 is actually at a lower security level than MLChem 1024, and yet their operation times, the MLChem operation time is far better, far faster. Um, of course, there are differences in different implementations, but in our implementation, it's pretty good. We've got pretty good performance. Um, so for XMSS and LMS, there's certain points to take forward and to remember here. It's stateful. That means that the private key mutates as you're using the private key. So for after a signature, the private key changes. It mutates into a different private key. So you have to manage that state very carefully. There's a signature count limit, like I had said earlier, and I explained it by showing you the Merkle tree. Um, it's not suitable for use in protocols because if your system goes down while you're in the middle of a protocol a handshake negotiation, you really don't know what state you should be returning to. But it is great for secure boot because you can kind of figure out where you were in terms of state if it goes down. The advantages of these are really interesting. So hash functions are well studied, well known, and well used and well trusted. And we only use the one-way property of hash functions in these algorithms. So these algorithms are very well trusted. Um, they're obviously resistant to quantum attacks, which is why they're part of the post-quantum algorithm toolkit. And they have super short public key lengths compared to MLDSA. So MLDSA, we're looking at on the order of kilobytes for the public key size, whereas for XMSS and LMS, we're looking at under 100 bytes, not under 100 kilobytes, 100 bytes. So it's a really nice algorithm in terms of public key size. Okay, so like I said, that was a little bit of a disparate kind of summary of post-quantum cryptography, but you'll see why we talk that way when I start talking about our HSM stuff. Now, it's important to talk about make a distinction between what we're talking about and what you would generally know as an HSM. When we talk about HSM, we're not talking about cloud servers and HSMs that you lock in a storage in a secure room, right? So what we're not talking about is what I'm about to describe in this slide. So it's a physically separated enclosure from the server body. It stores critical security information such as private keys, and it looks like a box on a rack mount. So what you're looking at over here in this image, right? HSMs generally look like they're rack mounted devices. And when you see them, you can see that, the boxes are usually seamless. And that's because they have interesting hardware countermeasures for anti-tampering. And they've got various detection mechanisms for tampering and stuff like that. And so this is not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is an HSM within a multi-core ECU, right? So we're talking about a single microprocessor that has multiple application cores, And these multiple application cores are, generally speaking, running their own program, their own applications. So on this single microprocessor, you've got, a process running a monitor for a particular peripheral, then another processor running it, monitoring another peripheral. And, then there's an HSM core within, it's on board the actual microchip, right? The microcontroller, sorry. And so this HSM core within the microcontroller basically has its own dedicated RAM, its own dedicated, communication lines to the other application cores. And what this does is it creates an onboard root of trust. And we'll get into what that actually means in the following slides. So typical hardware HSM cores like these, they come from their manufacturer with, onboard hardware dedicated towards certain algorithms such as AES, SHA, some of the various SHA algorithms, HMAC and CMAX. Um, Generally speaking, right now in the state of the art, these guys will support these cores will support RSA, ECDSA, and ECDH. So basically elliptic curve and RSA. And they'll, generally speaking, have their own true random number generator on board. Note that once you have these, hardware algorithms there, this is what you're limited to. So the use cases for these things are secure boot and secure firmware update, right? So we'll have something like wolf boot that talks to that talks to these things. And so it will wolf boot installed on these systems will have we'll be able to do firmware updates, but also firmware verification. So if someone had modified the firmware on that's dedicated on the application core, wolf boot will be able to detect that. And wolf boot will have the public key of that corresponds to the private key that signed the firmware images. So we'll be able to verify those those firmware images. So if someone somehow had, tried to do a firmware update or tried to change the firmware in some way, since they don't have the corresponding private key, we would be able to detect that and blow it away and just not boot it. It would be gone. Um, we One of the other use cases is device authentication during network communications, because this thing will be these cores will be provisioned with its own private key as well. It will be able to sign challenges and verify sign challenges that would allow someone else on the network to verify that this is indeed the device that it expects it to be. So this is kind of a very generic model of what of what we're talking about, right? Of what I've been talking about for the last few minutes. There's an application core, and there's cryptographic processing hardware on a bus, and there's memory that's dedicated towards that that cryptographic processing hardware, that HSM core. Now there's intercore communication. And so the application is talking to to this HSM core via those communication buffers. So what kind of buffers are these? There's, shared RAM. So it's possible to kind of put something in a RAM buffer and then tell the HSM core, hey, at this address, we need you to do this cryptographic operation, and then put the output of that operation into another buffer here. And so, and that's done via shared memory. Um, the other way that this can happen is basically through any of the communication mechanisms that are available within the microprocessor or microcontroller. So that could be through SPI, I2C, it could be, through DMA. It really does depend on the actual hardware that we're talking about and what its capabilities hold. But note that this is on board, right? This isn't some peripheral that's on the side and that the processor isn't aware of and had to authenticate and really can't authenticate because um, it, it's if it was a peripheral, then at some point the chip doesn't know whether it can actually trust the other side. Whereas now that it's on board and it can be provisioned on board, there's that extra layer of trust, and the root of trust can actually be achieved. So one of the challenges that I was talking about is once you have the algorithms there and you have the firmware there, that's it. You're done. You have you're basically set. There's no agility there, right? There's no way to kind of add to that or anything. You're basically stuck with, when it comes to asymmetric crypto, you're basically stuck with RSA, ECDH, and ECDSA. So what does wolfcrypt bring? Well, no, sorry, what does wolfHSM bring? wolfHSM is basically our wolfcrypt library running on that cryptographic processing hardware. So that cryptographic core. So what does that mean? It means we get to leverage um, all of that hardware crypto, because that's what we do. We're great at leveraging through our crypto callbacks and through our custom porting efforts. We'll support the hardware optimized crypto, but as well we have the ability of extensibility because we have um, we have a software wolfcrypt core in there. And note that because we also have wolfboot, we have the ability to do over-the-air updates of this cryptographic core, of the software on the cryptographic core. So what does that bring you? Well, suddenly that brings you all these other algorithms that you could possibly have. If we have wolfcrypt running on there, not only do we have the hardware optimized cryptography that's already there, but we have everything else that you could possibly need that's already in wolfcrypt. So that brings in, for example, all the AES modes. It brings in possibly Cha-Cha 20, which is really interesting. It brings in a lot of legacy things that we don't necessarily suggest you use, such as MD2 and 5. Don't use those. But if you need them to do some sort of, legacy operation, it's a possibility. Notably, we're talking about MLChem, MLDSA, LMS, and XMSS, all the post-quantum algorithms that we were talking about. In fact, we've already got MLDSA in wolfHSM working. So you can have a post-quantum on-board HSM in your microcontroller. Notably also, it brings in the possibility of interesting elliptic curve support, such as curve 25519 and 448 and brain pool. Those are generally not in these HSM cores, and we can have that, make that available, right? Also, I think is it not in this slide? Must be in the next slide, right? So, you know, I already highlighted it, but there's another thing that we can bring in. You might be trying to sell into the massive Chinese market, which requires use support of their SM ciphers. So we've already got SM2, SM3, SM4 support within wolfCrypt. So we can, bring that in. So what does that really tell you? Well, what it means is you don't necessarily need to have a separate, um, shall we say, hardware platform, a separate hardware microchip for the China market. You can actually use the same microchip, sorry, not microchip, the same microcontroller. I keep on saying microchip, the same microcontroller for the Chinese market as well as the any market really, because we have the agility to bring in these algorithms. And of course, SM234 are already supported within wolfCrypt. So just more generally, let's talk about where we support not moving outside of wolfHSM and taking a step back across our whole product portfolio. Where do we have post-quantum support? Well, we have it in Secure Boot, obviously. We've got Wolf Boot with wolfCrypt, wolfCrypt having the algorithms. So we've got wolfSSL with wolfCrypt, securing both TLS 1.3 and DTLS 1.3. This is really important. Um, for DTLS 1.3, there aren't many implementations out there. But if you're on either TLS or DTLS 1.2, you have to understand that the IETF has already said they don't want to make any more changes to those protocols. What that means is if you're on 1.2, you're not going to get post-quantum cryptography. You need to move to TLS 1.3 or DTLS 1.3. So at the bare minimum, if you don't want to move to post-quantum algorithms in the near future, if you want to wait a little while, at the bare minimum, what you should be doing right now is moving to 1.3. So for wolfSSH, we also have hybrid key exchanges. And for wolfMQTT, that rides on top of TLS 1.3. So all the work that we did in wolfSSL for post-quantum TLS 1.3, yeah, that works with wolfMQTT as well. So if you remember earlier, I said that we have wolfboot uh, working in tandem with wolf HSM. And what that means is that you'll be able to have the agility to update all the stuff within wolfHSM. And where we have the support for that is in our POSIX simulator, which you should go and download right now and go try it yourself. It's pretty interesting. It's a pretty cool little build process as well. Um, our biggest message right now is that Infineon Oryx Tricore, the 3.xx series, we have full support for that. So that's where we have the most interest coming in right now. We've also seen interest in the Infineon Oryx TC4 series and the T2G. Those are coming soon. And that's out of really high customer interest. And also now we already have support for the ST-SPC 58NN, and we've already implemented support for the Renesas RH850. That's implemented and currently in code review, so that should be in our next release of wolfHSM. So look out for that. If you now I wrote these slides a few days ago, so the Renesas RH850 support should already be in master. I can't, I didn't confirm it this morning, but definitely by the end of the month, it'll be definitely into master. So you can go and have a look at that. And by the way, this is, this is only 5 platforms. We have some really big plans for wolfHSM. So please do let us know what you're thinking in terms of what you want us to support. We want to hear what everybody's interested in and where everybody wants to go with this. So please do send us a message at facts@wolfSSL.com and mention wolfHSM and mention what hardware platform you're interested in that message. We'll get back to you, I promise. Okay, so we've come to the end of the content, and so we've come to the live Q&A portion. Um, Emma, do we have any questions in the queue?
Yes, thank you so much, Anthony. Okay, starting off, we now use a low performance hardware-based asymmetric pre-quantum crypt. Are we able to utilize the existing hardware for post-quantum crypt without significant performance degradations due to using only software-based post-quantum crypt?
Yeah, so like I said, so are we talking about symmetric or asymmetric? So let's talk about both. Let's start with the symmetric side first.
This
What
one
you're
is this
Oh,
one's referring to asymmetric, just so you know. But yes.
okay, so we're looking at asymmetric, and that's a great question then. So we're looking at MLChem and MLDSA, I'm guessing. And in terms of performance, MLChem is actually faster than the classical algorithms. Conventional algorithms. It's faster than ECDHE and EC, and therefore it's faster than FFDH as well. Now, when it comes to signature schemes, we're talking about MLDSA. It is not faster than ECDSA. That said, it's within the same within the same order of magnitude. You might find a slight downgrade in operations there.
Okay, well, moving on, will SLH DSA be going into wolfHSM?
That's a good question. It's a little bit complicated, right? So, um, when it comes to SLH DSA, yeah, it's been standardized and it has its own FIPS 207 document. I can't remember the exact number, but it's got its own NIST FIPS document. That said, because of what's going on with the CNSA 2.0 and it not mentioning that particular algorithm, a lot of people are kind of on the fence about it. So the first thing to do would be to implement it within wolfSSL, within wolfCrypt. Currently, what we're doing is we're using the libOQS integration for its implementation. So we would first have to implement it ourselves. And then once it's implemented, just provide an API for it through wolfHSM, and then that would be it. All that said, uh, we need to see a bit more customer interest in it. So obviously, this question shows that there is some interest. So if anyone else wants to kind of pile in and email us and let us know that they're interested in SLHDSA, we would welcome that news. Emma, next.
Wonderful. We are going to start a new embedded project, which is a battery-powered smart meter, which needs PQC. So the resources are somewhat limited. Is there any plan to have wolfHSM on available on low power friendly secure modules?
Yes. The answer is yes. And we understand our needs, the needs of our customers. We've looked around and really the how should we say it? Other libraries like to talk about crypto agility and and they believe in runtime crypto agility. And usually that means a real resource problem. They want things to be dynamic and switchable and everything's moving in and out. But what we here at wolfSSL believe in is in build time crypto agility, configuration time crypto agility. And what that means is that you pull in and push out things that you need at build time so that you have the best trade-offs for you and what you need at build time. So for example, your footprint needs to be small. Well, we can do that. You need low battery, you need low power consumption options. We can do that for you. Um, and so we don't have I don't have a particular platform in mind when it comes to this to low battery and low power options. But if you could let us know what you're currently using, we'd love to kind of have a conversation about that. So please do email us at facts@wolfSSL.com letting us know what particular hardware platform you're using.
Wonderful. Would you be able to go into more detail on how you would support LMS and XMSS on wolfHSM?
Oh, right. So I didn't mention that's that's a great point. Thanks, Emma. And thank you for whoever asked that question. So I didn't mention this, but right now we've implemented keygen and signing as well as verification in wolfcrypt. That said, when it comes to, saving the state and remember how I was talking about how the private key mutates? Well, um, when it comes to saving the state of the private key, we basically punt to the application via a callback mechanism within wolfcrypt. This is not ideal. So what it means is that we are depending on the application developer understanding too much about the algorithm for this to be safely offloaded to the user. So what we don't suggest is that it's appropriate for the user to use keygen and sign operations for XMSS and LMS. We don't suggest that it's appropriate. Um, and that's because they really need to understand how to handle that state of the private key. Um, Now, with wolfHSM, it's a little bit different. We now control what the environment is, the operating environment around us. And since we have a full and clear picture of the operating environment, we can utilize our expertise to protect the user and appropriately generate and use the private key. So the problem before was that, we don't know where you're saving your private key to. Maybe you're saving it to a network drive. That's wholly inappropriate, but you might not be aware that it's inappropriate. Now with wolfHSM, we know what the environment is. We know that it's what's appropriate and what's inappropriate, and we know how to safeguard that state. Thank you so much for asking that question.
Wonderful. I think the final question, once deployed into production and provisioned, how could we update wolfHSM to remove conventional algorithms once we go post-quantum?
Good point. Good point. So when you look at that CNSA 2.0 diagram, you're probably thinking, hey, wait, 2030, I have to remove this. But I'm on, on I have this, I have an HSM core and it's already got this static software in there. Well, with wolfHSM on most platforms, it supports firmware update of both the application cores as well as the wolfHSM core. And this is through a tight integration with wolfboot, right? So any functionality change that is required is just one secure firmware update away. So that's what makes this really interesting. It's the crypto agility of the combination of wolfboot and wolfHSM. Thank you for asking that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Anthony, for hosting an informative webinar. Thank you to everyone for joining. I will email a copy of the webinar recording and PDF slides. You can keep up with our upcoming events, meet our team in person, read our blog posts, and get the latest wolfSSL updates by following us on X, connecting with us on LinkedIn, and subscribing to our YouTube channel. If you have any questions, please reach out to us at facts@wolfSSL.com. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you on May 21st for our webinar on securing the future wolfSSL solutions for NXP, IoT Edge, MCX, MCU portfolio. Have a good day.